Now, how many would agree that the real challenge that most people have is not some bug is attacking them, but the real challenge that they have is their environment has basically been compromised. That they've done things probably in their lifestyle, consciously or unconsciously, that have put the body in a weakened state and has caused the environment to be polluted, and now problems are building on top of each other. How many buy that theory? Say aye. Okay, if you buy that theory, then the question is, how do we get there? How do we get imbalanced? And then the second question, the more important one, then is, how do we get that balance back quickly? The first thing that happens that takes us out of balance is there's a disturbance. Now, what could disturb our bloodstreams, disturb our environment? Well, as I start out with again, negative thoughts, negative words, negative actions, those emotions, do they have an impact on our bloodstream, yes or no? Absolutely. And you can feel it, can't you? You know it's visceral. You know your whole body starts to shift when you go in these states. Now, after you have that experience, try adding to that a polluted environment. Do you think breathing, I should say, all the smog in the air makes you alkaline or acid? What would your common sense say? Totally makes you acidic. Okay? Now, LA's air is a lot better than it was before. Most of the country is getting better, fortunately, but it still affects us. Acid diets. What's an acid diet? A diet that's made up of animal proteins is acid. A diet made up of a lot of cooked oils is acid. A diet that's made up of a lot of sugar is acid. A diet made up of a lot of carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, processed carbohydrates, like pastas, etc., it's going to have a lot of sugar. Sugar, just think sugar equals acid and acid equals glue. That's a good way for you to think about it. The outside of the red blood cell is a negative charge. That's what keeps them repelling. The inside is positive. But what happens is when you put yourself in a position where you have this acid, it strips that charge, and now these cells start to collect. They start to move and become unhealthy. When they start banging into each other, and you can see it in people's bloodstreams, you can see the difference in what happens there between a healthy bloodstream where the red blood cells are big and plump and alive and round, versus you see these misshapen cells, and you see these cells starting to break down, and very often you see things like parasites starting to break out of the cell. Literally, you see it rip out of the cell. It's a very scary thing to see. Radiation can do this. We're in front of these screens all the time, most of us, right? Using computers now. We have all this stuff that we don't know the impact on. So we don't have to live crazily, but we want to avoid any excess radiation, because could that disturb the delicate balance, could it, of the electrical magnetic part of your body? Yes or no? Clearly. So those disturbances start there. And then any kind of other destructive behavior or emotion. Now, once you have a disturbance, think of this. Irritation leads to mutation. Right? That's where it can go. So when something gets irritated, it gets out of balance. It gets out of balance, it either weakens, dies, or mutates. So irritation leads to mutation. So what happens is when you have a disturbance, the second thing happens is cells become disorganized. They change, basically, to try and deal with an environment that's different, because life wants to live. I mean, when you even think about cancer, cancer cells are cells that are striving to live so much that they can even expand like crazy in an environment where there's no oxygen. So they mutated, and now they're growing more rapidly than you want them to. It's actually life moving forward, and it's adapting to the environment we give it to. So when you disturb yourself, some disturbances are huge. A car accident, is that a significant disturbance to your body? You bet. That ruptures cells. When you rupture cells, do you think there's more acid in the body or less? Quick. More acid. The body's got to deal with that. So much of it, it can really be a trauma to the system. But when you get disturbances, cells disorganize so they can adapt to this environment. As they do that, the third step is you get a compromised environment. What that means is cells start to really adapt now to this morbid environment, this environment that is not healthy. And all of a sudden now you have healthy cells becoming what? Unhealthy cells. I mean, you can see this under the microscope with people in their bloodstreams. And all of a sudden you have these things called germs that start to grow like crazy, like bacteria and yeast and fungus and molds. Because now you've created an environment in which they can feed. You've created a place where they get to live. Now what's really fascinating, and you'll see this at Mastery, and this will sound insane to some of my doctor friends in the room, but I took Dr. Solomon, who's on the UN board of aging, and he's the head of the Council for Health and Illness, I guess it is, for the United Nations. So also from Johns Hopkins University, is the head of nutrition there. Traditionally trained guy, and I brought him about 2 months ago. He was supposed to go for 2 hours because I said, I've seen things in the bloodstream that traditional biology would never say is possible. I've seen a red blood cell literally not be attacked from the outside, but literally when the environment became acid, start to morph and become a rod form, a bacteria. We think of bacteria coming from the outside. Here's this red blood cell like a butterfly morphing and becoming another kind of cell. And then morphing back later when it went to an alkaline part of the body back into red blood cell. It's all called on videotape. It's called pleomorphism. It's supposed to be impossible. And he's captured this several times because this guy's whole focus is the blood. He does everybody's blood, and he studies it and watches it. So I called Dr. Solomon. I said, all I can tell you, I've never felt better in my life. I see my blood is so pure. I've seen my blood go, now the red blood cells are big and plump because my body's alkaline. I got enough water in the system, not dehydrated. My energy's amazing. I said, I've always had high energy, but not where it was like I had such reserves. That's the best word I can give to you. I have reserve now. Before I could do it, and I was going through my reserves, you know? And I said, come take a look. Fly out for me. He said, okay, I'll go check it out. He said, yeah, I'm going between these two places. I'll stop for 2 hours. He stopped for 2 days. And he called me up and he said, this is unbelievable. He said, I want to test that. He's going to do a study at Harvard Medical School. He's trying to arrange one, and at Johns Hopkins, to be able to show the impact that this has on the bloodstream, to show that this has occurred. He wants to be able to duplicate what he's seen. But he said, this is unbelievable because we always think of the outside world attacking us. He said, what I'm seeing is the inside environment, just like with HIV they say it, and now they say for these viruses that the reason they can't stop it is because it keeps what? Mutating into something else. Well, our red blood cells de-differentiate and become something else. What happens is this starts to create this buildup of these bacteria, yeast, molds, and guess what they do? They're creatures, right? They're feeding now on your energy stores, and like all living things, they feed on things, and what do all living things also do? They excrete their wastes, and their wastes are pure acid. So not only are you building the acid up from your lifestyle, but you're now creating an environment where these things proliferate and or adapt. Now on top of that, they put their own waste in, which brings you to the fourth level of imbalance. Now you have debilitating acids growing so that the waste products from those unhealthy cells pollute the environment, and they start to impact the quality of even the healthy cells now. And so more disturbances, more disorganization of cells, worse environment, more acids, and now you're going to what most people think of as debilitating diseases or aging or whatever the case may be. It's an acid problem that comes from disturbance. Now, let me just tell you this. It takes 4 parts of alkalinity to balance out or neutralize 1 part of acid. That's why most people are so acid. So what's neat about the blood and what's neat about the foods is you can see it. You know, it's not this little, oh, I'm going to take this supplement and hope it's okay. I mean, you can see it and you can feel it. You have both experiences.